Judgement by Tulisa Contostavlos, published on the 14th of August 2025. A review by me, Alex William Smith, by birth better known as Jonathan Royle, magician and hypnotist of magicalguru.com and circusofthemind.net. Wow, this 328 page turner arrived, delivered by Amazon to my home yesterday, the 14th of August. It arrived around 8 o'clock in the evening. I put it to one side and then curiosity got the better of me, so I went to bed early at around 10:30 to start reading. And in the early hours of this morning, the 15th of August 2025, and by early hours I mean it was around 4 o'clock in the morning, I had finished the entire book from page to page. It genuinely is a page turner. So the short version of this review is, go and buy this. It is in equal parts a crime thriller, reads like a crime thriller. Sorry, my functional neurological disorder kicking in there a little bit, stopping me speaking. Yeah, it's in equal parts a crime thriller, as well as other parts that are like a romantic novel, albeit with lots of toxic relationship stuff in there. And an expose as well weaved in about Rupert Murdoch's fake Sheikh Mazher Mahmood and the dishonest and often illegal techniques that he would use to manipulate and fabricate his stories and to manufacture malicious prosecutions that frankly the Crown Prosecution Service would turn a blind eye to, because as I reveal on circusofthemind.net, there is now cast iron proof that the Metropolitan Police and the Crown Prosecution Service both knew back in 1994, I'm in the kitchen so excuse the noises, both knew back in 1994 that Mahmood could not and should not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth again, and indeed they said that in communications to each other, and yet they carried on allowing his perjurious lies and fabricated evidence and manipulation and entrapment of people without any real lawful excuse, because apparently that stuff is allowed if you have as a journalist, a source that has given you just cause to believe the person. In Tulisa's case, for example, was apparently dealing drugs. In my case, apparently a drug dealing, counterfeit money supplying, who's a gun salesman. But the thing is, because of a strange legal loophole, they do not have to reveal their sources because of journalistic privilege and journalistic protection, meaning that it's impossible to then cross-examine the apparent source or prove the fact that they don't have a source, and it's all just been an entrapment and a manipulation exercise to fabricate and frame somebody into doing things they would never normally do, or make it look like they had when they actually hadn't. So this is one heck of a read, 1,000,000% unreservedly recommended, and yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit more insight in a minute, but remember, the Tulisa trial, the case against her collapsed on the 21st of July 2014. So that's 20 years, because in 1994 the police and CPS communicated with each other in writing, documents that I'm aware of, and they're mentioned on my website circusofthemind.net, where they say that Mahmood could not and should not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth ever again. This means that because that was not disclosed to me or any other Mahmood victims I've spoken to, Tulisa doesn't mention it in the book, which means that they failed in their disclosure duties towards me, Tulisa and other fake Sheikh victims, because the police and CPS should have let us know that a case collapsed in 1994 based on Mahmood's lies. They should have let us know that a case collapsed in 1998 due to his dishonesty. They should have let us know a case collapsed in 1999 due to it being shown that he edited video recordings to manipulate evidence. They should have told us about other cases that have collapsed due to his dishonesty, but they didn't. If they had done, then our representatives would have been, our barristers, our legal teams, would have been able to argue that the case should never come to court because its main and often sole witness was Mazher Mahmood, the fake Sheikh of newsgroup, newspapers, News of the World and Sun on Sunday fame. Well, as I say, have a quick look at this clip and then I will give you a few more insights, because the Tulisa trial collapsed on the 21st of July 2014. From page 18, I quote, "The next thing I remember is waking up hungover at home next to my indoor swimming pool, with little recollection of how the night had ended in the hotel room, and massive gaps when recalling the night before. The next day, all three of us said that we felt as if we'd been spiked." It's not the only time within the pages that Tulisa says that she believes she and her friends and members of her team that were at the meetings with Mazher Mahmood and his other team members and actors who were part of this elaborate entrapment and sting. She said multiple times in the book that she believes that there were probably things put into their drinks, and I categorically assert that I believe that took place. Excuse the washing machine in the kitchen. I believe that took place because I know it happened with me and it happened with other fake Sheikh victims. And what I mean by is I know it happened to me is if you go to circusofthemind.net, you will find on there both a video and also links to documentary evidence, including a video on my YouTube channel, Celebrity Hypnotist, where one of Mahmood's former photographers and drivers, Steve Grayson, swears under penalty of perjury, gave me a legal statement for my criminal appeal to my ongoing quest to get my two Mahmood related convictions that are now considered unsafe overturned, and has clearly said he's witnessed Mahmood during the course of stings use a date rape style GHB style drug that he saw him put into people's drinks to make them more talkative and compliant. And there are other people galore, celebrities and non-famous people, who have asserted that they believe their drinks were drugged by Mazher Mahmood. There's links to the details of those people and the evidence at circusofthemind.net. So yes, I believe Tulisa and her friends were most likely drugged, as it seems to have been a regular part of his modus operandi, rather, as they say. Talking of drugging drinks, here's a short excerpt from a video that you'll find on my Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel.
Particularly, it is said that Mahmood surreptitiously administered date rape type drugs to his targets in order to inebriate them and render them more susceptible to manipulation. There's other things on there that he messed with evidence, edited it, loads of other things, but we're just talking about the drugs here. And as you can see, there's various other things. Clearly pointing out here that on the 2nd of April, the 3 £1 coins I gave were genuine from my pocket, and the ones on the 9th of April were from a place told to get them from by Mahmood's associates. And
the key thing at the top, hid sources from the court, police and defence via journalistic privilege, something that's mentioned a lot in Tulisa's book, Judgement.
Provided the money, you can see that on screen at circusofthemind.net. So, here as you can see is the witness statement of Stephen Grayson, 17th of May 2021, in support of my appeal. You can see Stephen Grayson talking about his time working with Mahmood in the BBC Panorama documentary Fake Sheikh Exposed, which again can be seen on circusofthemind.net. This is the bit to look at. I'll leave you to read it. Spiking of drinks. I've been asked what I know about the spiking of drinks. Mazher boasted that he knew a pharmacist who could provide him with a GHB-like drug and that he used it in his social life to seduce, if that is the right word, young women. On occasion, I acted as Mazzy's butler, and I noticed how quickly the girls became disinhibited even after a small amount of drinks. I recall one incident when I strongly suspected that a spiked drink was used in a News of the World sting. This incident took place in a suite at the Savoy. There was a man and a woman. The man was turning over the woman, i.e. he was working with us, betraying the woman, stitching her up. I recall it was something to do with a plan to rob a betting shop, but I am not certain. The woman was not being very forthcoming, and Mazher offered her a drink. Unusually, instead of getting a flunky to serve the drinks, he made it himself and brought it over. Within 15 to 20 minutes, the woman said that she was feeling woozy, but was much more talkative. She was later sick in the bathroom. It seemed to me at the time that he had spiked her drink. Someone who worked with Mahmood closely at one time, now giving me a statement to say that he'd witnessed it occur and that Mahmood bragged about it as well. As you can see, Tulisa was left hyper-drunk after a meeting with undercover reporter, the fake Sheikh. This is the case that collapsed in 2014. Obviously, the fake Sheikh denied spiking Tulisa's drink, but her barrister, Jeremy Dine, did make that assertion in court. As you can see, reporter denied spiking.
The fact is, Law, the evidence and the fact that so many different people, as mentioned on circusofthemind.net, have asserted this over the years independently. Well, there you go. There is also mention by Tulisa within the pages of the fact that unlawful information gathering techniques and covert surveillance were carried out on her and people around her on an industrial scale by the likes of Mazher Mahmood and Murdoch's media publications. Indeed, Tulisa was in what they call trance 4 of the mobile telephone voicemail interception litigation, the same trance that I was in, that was filed on the 30th of September 2022, and which in Tulisa's case she settled just towards the end of 2024, I believe shortly before or just after coming out of the I'm a Celebrity jungle. I settled mine just before Christmas 2024, receiving my private written apology from Newsgroup newspapers for the actions of Mahmood in March this year. Again, there's more on that at circusofthemind.net and on in the Fake Sheikh playlist on my Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel. So I know from my legal process against Newsgroup newspapers that evidence is now there, and it's out in the public domain on circusofthemind.net, a lot of it, because of the generic particulars of concealment and destruction, showing the absolute vast scale of criminality and cover-ups in relation to unlawful information gathering, phone hacking and other related techniques that were used on a routine daily basis. And the more I've looked into this, certainly in Trans 4, there were lots of victims of Mazher Mahmood, the fake Sheikh, who took cases against Newsgroup newspapers for phone hacking, unlawful information gathering and related things in the mobile telephone voicemail interception litigation, the so-called Mitville. And Newsgroup paid all of us off with what they call Part 36 offers. This is a way of them weaponising the law to effectively silence the victims and stop them being able to step into a courtroom and get a judge of law to rule on their evidence. Because basically, if they offer you even 1 pence more than a judge offers you were you to win your case, then even though you've won your case, because you did not accept that greater offer off them to settle matters out of court, you then become liable not just for all your own legal costs, but also for all their legal costs, which in the case of Newsgroup newspapers would run into the millions. And nobody has been able to afford that not even Prince Harry or Lord Tom Watson, for whom, because they were also Mazher Mahmood victims, I gave a witness statement for their claims in the Mitville that were settled at the start of the year in January 2025. So there's very little in the book about, there isn't really any mention of her Mitville claim, but that definitely got filed in September 2022 and it definitely got settled before Christmas. I know because I was in the same trance and my name appeared on the same list that can be found on the internet, and I know that it was part of Mahmood's standard modus operandi rather, to have people's phones hacked, to use covert surveillance and other things that are basically not legal unless you had a total lawful. The phone hacking is not legal, full stop, but surveillance itself is not legal, and secret covert filming and stuff is not legal either unless you have a lawful excuse as a journalist, and that would involve having proof that you had a reliable source that had indicated that Tulisa was a drug dealer, which she never was, or that I was a dealer of guns and counterfeit money and there was pimp and pornographer, none of which ever was. I was a media prankster and someone who wanted to expose dishonesty in the media, as explained at circusofthemind.net. But they would need that, and then that would allow them, if they had that reliable witness and just cause to believe such was going on, that would give them lawful excuse as a journalist to do these things, to expose such. Whereas in reality, as happened with Tulisa and explained in this book in depth, it's eye-opening indeed. You'll be on the edge of your seat, just like I was. You'll find it next to impossible to put the book down until you've read it all, which is what happened with me. And also what happened with me in sort of practically identical manner to Tulisa and other Mahmood victims is that Mahmood and his team created the stories. It seemed to came up with an idea, went, yeah, I'm gonna target that person and I will manipulate them, use social engineering and dishonest and often wholly illegal techniques to pressure them into doing something they would never normally dream of, and then edit recordings or turn recordings off, talked about in here, so that it doesn't give a true picture of events, so that it makes it look worse for the victim, Tulisa, myself, or other people, as per circusofthemind.net, and then give this false portrayal as apparent evidence to the police. Although, as I've already said, the police and Crown Prosecution Service, there are documents that exist, as per mentioned on circusofthemind.net, that prove that the police and CPS both communicated with each other in 1994 and said Mahmood should not and could not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth ever again after the collapse of a case in 1994. Which begs the question, why did they, till 2014, another 20 years, carry on allowing his malicious prosecutions to go through, turning a blind eye, despite the fact that tons of us Mahmood victims asserted the fact we believed our drinks had been drugged. We now have evidence of that thanks to the statement from Steve Grayson, as per circusofthemind.net. Many of us asserted that recordings had either been purposely got rid of or edited and spliced. And indeed, the case of Roderick Giggs in 1999 fell apart because of that. And at no time did the police or CPS ever disclose these cases that fell apart through to his dishonesty to Tulisa, me, or other victims, which begs the question of why they massively failed in their disclosure duties, meaning I would argue that the vast majority, not all probably, but the vast majority of Mazher Mahmood related convictions that were obtained as a result of his stories, I would argue are unsafe, and that they should never have got to court in the first place, and wouldn't have got to court if the police and CPS, and I don't believe Tulisa would have ever gone to court either, if the police and CPS had disclosed the fact that they knew cases had collapsed due to Mahmood's dishonesty, due to Mahmood manipulating evidence and all these other related matters. I quote from pages 252 and 253 of Tulisa's excellent book, Judgement. I stood in the dock, anxiously trying to take in all the information. I was about to find out whether or not the prosecution would have to reveal the identity of the woman that played the role of Nish during the sting. Mahmood was claiming that she had played no part in convincing me to act a certain way throughout the setup, even though she had conveniently taken off her recording device at the same moment I'd said in my defence that she took me to the toilet and told me to up the ante. In fact, the key part of my defence all came down to Nish, and how she'd been coaching and manipulating me and Gareth throughout the sting, which had led me to put on an act. But I could only bring her into my defence if she was cross-examined on the stand and given the chance to either defend herself or admit that my accusations were true. She had so far requested that her identity remained hidden and supposedly told Mahmood she did not want to appear in court. Unless the judge now ordered her to do so, she would not have to be cross-examined and I would not be able to mention her in my defence. Considering she was pretty much 90% of my defence, I'd be in big trouble if she didn't appear. It was already my word versus Mahmood's, and if I couldn't mention Nish, I wouldn't even be able to explain my side of the story. I sat listening intently, waiting for the judge to give his decision on bringing Nish forward. Everything depended on this. If I couldn't tell the jury about Nish, I had no defence at all. My ears pricked up as the judge cleared his throat. Due to the laws on journalistic privileges, the person known to the courts as Nish may keep her identity hidden and will not have to attend trial. I shook my head furiously at his words. This couldn't be. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. Mahmood had known the loophole was there all along to help him create his perfect setup. It was exactly the same as the issue with the source. If we could prove the supposed source that made the original tip-off to the paper, which they claim kicked off their sting, didn't actually exist or had lied, there wouldn't be a case. But again, because of journalistic privileges, Mr. Mahmood and the Sun on Sunday did not have to reveal their source's identity. This wasn't about finding out the truth or if I was innocent. It was just a powerful man's game of chess. Rule versus rule, law versus law, and legal loopholes. Regardless of the facts, the law was now legally overriding the truth and essentially ignoring right and wrong. What kind of legal system was this? And what kind of fucked up world were we living in? Well, it's a question worth asking because the same thing happened to me and loads of other Mahmood victims. My former publicist wasn't able to be called to the stand, which is why on the first day of trial I changed my long-term not guilty plea to guilty with mitigating circumstances, as mentioned at circusofthemind.net. They manipulated the system in the criminal trials that were malicious prosecutions in the same way as they manipulated the system, I would argue, by weaponising Part 36 offers to silence Tulisa, me and other people who made claims in the Mitville. It is ridiculous. And on top of that, above all that as well, the Police and Crown Prosecution Service failed in their disclosure duties towards Tulisa, towards myself and other Mahmood victims, by not revealing to us those things that could undermine the credibility of the key witness, Mahmood, namely the fact that they knew in 1994 and communicated with each other saying he could not and should not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth. Mainly the fact that in 1998 a trial collapsed, 1999 Roderick Giggs trial collapsed, where it was shown that he'd manipulated evidence, and other cases collapsed over the years. The details of those at circusofthemind.net and at the other links you'll find above or below this video. It really does look like, when you look at it in depth, that the Police and Crown Prosecution Service just turned a blind eye to Mahmood's dishonesty, to his perjurious lies, to the fact that so many different people, independently of each other, asserted the fact they believed their drinks had been drugged, evidence of which is now on circusofthemind.net, that numerous people had said they believed that maybe their phones or private confidential information had been obtained somehow. Now, I didn't realise that until in the past couple of years when I was approached and shown evidence of that, which is then when I made my legal claim. But some people in the past thought that may have happened. We now know that it was a standard part of Mahmood's modus operandi, as was paying people off, lots of money, people close to you. In my case, my former publicist. In some other people's cases, it was their former managers. This reads like a Stranger Than Fiction crime novel combined with a romance novel, and yet every word of it is stated to be true, and I believe it to be true. And in fact, I think this is watered down slightly, if anything, because from my personal experience of being a Mahmood victim and also having been in Trans 4 that was filed in September 2022, the Mitville mobile telephone voicemail interception litigation and stuff I found out through the disclosure process in that, which has given me loads of fresh evidence for taking my appeal back to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, which will happen in due course. That's being prepared by my barrister at this time. I am aware that the rabbit hole goes way deeper than is alluded to in this book. So when you read this, if you think that couldn't happen, could it? Well, let me tell you, it does. It did routinely. Not just with Tulisa, but with me and other Mahmood victims, and in fact things way worse and far more imaginable, such as those I mentioned on circusofthemind.net, also took place routinely. On 21st of July 2014, the drug trial against Tulisa collapsed when Mahmood was exposed as a liar.
Let me be perfectly clear. I have never dealt drugs and never been involved in taking or dealing cocaine. This whole case was a horrific and disgusting entrapment by Mazher Mahmood and the Sun on Sunday newspaper. Mahmood has now been exposed by my lawyers, openly lying to the judge and jury. These lies were told to stop crucial evidence going before the jury. This evidence showed that I told Mahmood's long-standing driver that I disapproved of drugs, which is the truth. It is clear that the driver was pressurised to change his statement to strengthen Mahmood's evidence and damage to mine. Thankfully, the lies have been uncovered and justice has been done. This case only happened because the Sun on Sunday, Mahmood and his team tricked me into believing I was auditioning for a major movie role. They targeted me at a time when things were going badly for me and they had no mercy. Mahmood got me and my team completely intoxicated and persuaded me to act the part of a bad, rough ghetto girl. They recorded this and produced it as evidence when I thought it was an audition. It was a terrible thing to do. As my lawyer said at the outset, we have now succeeded in exposing the real culprits and, most importantly, the real liar. As someone who has had my life ruined for the past year, I strongly believe that this type of entrapment should not be allowed to happen to anyone. I urge both police and News UK to investigate Mazher Mahmood and his team and to put an end to his deceit in pursuit of sensational stories for commercial gain. I have not been able to work for a year and I am now looking forward to resuming my career. I will use these experiences to make me stronger. I would like to thank all of the people who have supported me through this terrible ordeal, including my fans and of course my legal team.
Along the way, we also learn what a financial impact as well as emotional impact this had on Tulisa, and as mentioned that it cost it cost her the loss of her home that she'd already put £500,000 deposit on. She lost that and lost the home as well, and that her legal bill cost in excess of £1 million. Wow. I wasn't lucky enough to be in that kind of position, and a lot of fake shape victims weren't. I ended up with a legal aid appointed, government appointed legal aid barrister and what they call duty solicitor originally, and well, no offence intended to anyone, but they do say often you get what you pay for, and Tulisa, as we know, managed to finally expose in 2014 Mahmood's dishonesty. Her barrister Jeremy Dine, through questioning, uncovered Mahmood's lies, and that led to the judge on the 21st of July 2014 declaring that the trial was over. Tulisa was free to go, as was her associate Mike, that was facing charges for supplying drugs. The whole thing was an horrific entrapment, a manufactured thing. In fact, Tulisa was anti-drugs, had stated she was anti-drugs, she didn't want to be anywhere near drug dealers, and it was Mahmood's driver, Alan Smith, who ultimately, for whatever reason, and I have no idea why, but apparently ended up coming clean to the police and the courts and handing over copies of emails that showed Mahmood had conspired and manipulated manipulated him into altering his evidence so that it would make Tulisa look guilty and make it look like it wasn't her who'd said those things. But when the truth came out, she had indeed and is and was anti-drugs. And well, you'll read more in Judgement, published on the 14th of August 2025. It is the first book I've read in years from cover to cover in one sitting. Partly that's because I'm a fellow fake shape victim, and in 1998 defamatory lies galore were published about me by Mazher Mahmood. In 1999, due to pretty much the same reasons Tulisa mentions in this book, I was unable to prove the fact that they didn't have a source, and yet, because if they didn't have a reliable source or reason to believe that certain things were taking place, then it would mean that they had no lawful excuse to covert video and audio record or to do the other surveillance and other things that they did in the pursuit of their entrapments. But in my Mitville proceedings, filed in September 2022, during the course of disclosure, I obtained fresh evidence, contents of what they call the Enfield archives, newsgroup newspapers archives, where there were copies of the secret video and audio recordings. There were documents, and there was all the stuff, well, not all, but some bits were conveniently missing, things that would have proved my innocence even more. But there was enough there to prove that everything I've ever said always has been 100% true, as outlined on circusofthemind.net. There was evidence that came to light to strengthen my assertion that it was my intention to try and expose the dishonesty and the fabricated lies of Mazher Mahmood and his team, and that it has stunningly backfired on me because they were always 10, 15, 20 steps ahead, because unbeknownst to me at the time, they were using phone hacking, unlawful information gathering and other techniques to know what I was up to. In other words, they knew I was trying to expose their dishonesty. I thought it was just them. I was trying to expose the fact that they published fabricated lies and blew things out of proportion, as I explained at circusofthemind.net. But in actual fact, they were, as the evidence now shows, drugging people, hacking phones, using unlawful information gathering, paying people thousands and thousands of pounds that the person trusted in order to get that person to manipulate and socially engineer and lie and create situations where people were tricked into doing things they would never normally do. They were editing evidence, making evidence disappear entirely, saying recordings didn't exist, and yet that made absolutely no sense when they recorded other things. Manipulating evidence, as in the 1999 Rodriguez case, which collapsed. And all of this, a blind eye was being turned again and again by the police and Crown Prosecution Service. Documents exist proving in 1994 they said to each other, Mahmood could not and should not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth, and yet they continued until 2014, allowing his malicious prosecutions to go by without properly being strength tested, without properly being investigated. And because of this journalistic privilege loophole, victims like myself were unable to prove the fact that they didn't have any proper reliable source, and there was no foundation or lawful excuse for them to be doing the covert filming, to be doing the other things. Because in my case, as I mentioned at circusofthemind.net, the person who tipped off the news of the world was me, and in a manner whereby they knew that it was me. That sounds batshit crazy, but it'll make more sense when you fully study circusofthemind.net and the Fake Sheikh playlist of videos on my Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel. Unfortunately, because of things like phone hacking and surveillance and them paying my former publicist thousands of pounds to stitch me up, they were so many steps ahead, and because I didn't know how deep the rabbit hole went with things like phone hacking and drugging people and other criminality, there was no way they could allow me to expose the fact that, you know, a little tiny grain of truth, like somebody ringing a local massage parlour to have some girls arrive at their hotel room later, could be turned into a story giving the impression that the person was some type of big-time pimp and pornographer, when nothing could be further from the truth. That's all I thought I was trying to expose. I didn't know about all this other stuff going on, but they knew that if a spotlight had been shined upon the fact they took little things, manipulated them and printed them as though they were something far more severe and serious, and that they could get away with this because of this journalistic privilege loophole, and the fact that people like myself and a lot of other victims did not have access to a legal team costing over £1 million, that they could get away with doing whatever they wanted, as they did as Mahmood did for decades, with the police and CPS turning a blind eye. And as you'll see at the links above or below this video, there's a petition there, and there's an open letter to the Crown Prosecution Service, the police and the government and the Justice Secretary, because I believe my convictions and those of many other Mahmood victims to be unsafe, and that there needs to be a proper investigation into why did the police, why did the CPS never tell Tulisa, never tell me, and never tell other Fake Sheikh victims that they knew in 1994 Mahmood could not and should not ever be trusted as a witness of truth. Why did they not tell us that? Why did they not tell us about the Collapse 98 case, the Collapse 99 Rodriguez case, the Collapse 2001 cases, and the other collapse cases due to Mahmood's dishonesty and dishonest, arguably illegal actions? It looks, to a bystander, like a massive cover-up. A corrupt cover-up, the kind of thing that part 2 of the Leveson inquiry that was going to investigate links between the police and the government, perhaps, and the CPS and the media and all that kind of area would have looked at. Probably good reason why Leveson inquiry part 2 hasn't happened yet. Hopefully, though, maybe there were a renewed thirst for it and public outcry when ITV's new 7-part drama series The Hack starts in September on ITV, which before it I believe there's going to be a documentary called The Hack as well, and this has been tipped already in the media as being this year's answer to Mr. Bates versus the Post Office that caused a massive outcry into those miscarriages of justice. Well, hopefully it will also shed a light on the massive miscarriages of justice that are the majority of Mazher Mahmood victims, who were lied about, manipulated and tricked and forced into doing things they would never normally do, or made to look like they'd done things they hadn't done, or made it to look like they said things they hadn't said because certain bits of recordings were conveniently lost, as Tulisa talks about in this excellent book, Judgement. 1,000,000% recommended. Go get a copy today. And if you want to learn more about Mahmood's dishonesty, go to the links above or below this video, or to circusofthemind.net. Please like this video and share this video. My name's, by birth, Alex William Smith, better known as Johnson Royle, hypnotist and mind magician of magicalguru.com. Bye for now. Thanks to the collapse of the Tulisa trial, ultimately Mazher Mahmood and his driver Alan Smith were charged with conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. I, along with other victims of Mahmood, were there to see him sentenced.
Turn now, Mazher, from the public gallery, as some of those Mazher Mahmood targeted were there to see him sentenced. One of them, the former London's burning actor John Alford, who spent 9 months in jail following one of Mahmood's stings, welcomed the judgment.
Well, he's going to wake up in a prison cell. That's one
is a good
thing.
result.
It's taken over 20 years for some of us, but finally a judge and a jury of our peers has woken up to Mazher Mahmood's lies.
For 25 years, Mahmood's stock was high, exposing the secrets of the rich and famous, making for explosive front-page headlines. He targeted...
That was me waiting with other victims as we saw Mahmood arrive at the Old Bailey to be sentenced.
Firstly, I would like to welcome the jury's verdict. I thank the British public and our families for their unwavering support. And I would also like to thank Alistair Morgan for his strength and inspiration in fighting injustice. In 1984, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act was put in place to protect the public from unscrupulous and corrupt police officers. But there is nothing in place to protect us, the public, from unscrupulous and corrupt journalists. This has led to a very unsavoury relationship between the two. We now know that Mazher Mahmood is a manipulator of evidence and a serial perjurer. This goes to show no one is above the law, and no one can create crimes or destroy evidence. There is a clear pattern of evidence manipulation in all of our cases. All the tapes Mazher Mahmood had sole possession of were destroyed or went missing. There are many more questions to be asked and a lot more justice to be served. It's taken over 20 years for some of us, but finally a judge and a jury of our peers has woken up to Mazher Mahmood's lies. We would now like to take this opportunity to ask Parliament to honour their promise to the British people and implement Leveson Part 2. Our three estates, the monarchy, Parliament and the judicial system, they must be held accountable, yes, but they must not be held to ransom by a corrupt or unscrupulous press. So please, let's cleanse this stain on our democracy once and for all. Thank you.